let's consider the version of why airships were banned. The topic is interesting, and it directly concerns the secrets of our real-world order. In fact, few people have any idea about the real reasons, but first let's look at the well-known facts. It is believed that airships were built at the end of the 19th and beginning of the 20th centuries. Actually, this is not true. In the 19th century, there was a choice of what to develop, airships or aircraft manufacturing, and airships were more promising. Let's consider why. Comfort with unlimited volumes, cabins can be like on a cruise ship, and all the amenities are at the appropriate level. Carrying capacity and flight range. An airship can carry more passengers than an airplane, or a colossal amount of cargo. Imagine a cruise ship in the air with 3,000 to 4,000 passengers on board. An airship is the highest reliability and safety if you do not use explosives as a filler. There are options for thermal filling, or combined, and each has its own advantage. Safety is many times higher than that of airplanes or helicopters. In fact, even in the largest disasters, airships have shown the highest survivability of people. Economical. This type of transport has significantly lower fuel consumption, and, as a result, lower flight costs and lower passenger consumption per kilometer, or per unit of transported mass. They could replace a significant part of sea cargo transportation. The airship has an unlimited time in the air, like on anti-gravity thrust. The airfield infrastructure and landing strip are not critical for it. It may not land at all, but simply hover above the ground. Of course, skeptics will say that the airship has a lot of shortcomings. For example, he flies slowly. This is wrong. It is possible to build stratospheric airships that will rise 20 to 30 kilometers and fly at speeds of more than 1,000 kilometers per hour. This is due to the rarefied atmosphere at high altitude. And then the size and shape are no longer important there. In addition, those who will fly on an airship can sail like a ship at a relatively low speed on an air cruise. In most cases, high speed and entry into the stratosphere are not needed at all. You just have to remember that in the first half of the 20th century, airships flew at speeds of up to 150 kilometers per hour. They claim that they have poor maneuverability. This is also not true. A modern airship does not need to be a balloon with a gondola, as was done at the beginning of the 20th century. It can be molded into any ideal, suitable shape to ensure both maneuverability and streamlining. Disembarkation of passengers can be achieved using a mooring mast, hovering the device itself above the ground, or using a lowered airship elevator, or delivery by helicopter directly from the device. It will behave no worse than an airplane during flight and landing, and even much better. Large hangars are considered a disadvantage. But if you think about it, is this such a disadvantage? Nobody considers docks for ships that accommodate a cruise ship to be prohibitively expensive. If all this were mass-produced, the airships would cost less than modern Boeings, and maintenance would be much easier. And with all the unprecedented prospects for cargo and passenger transportation, one event happened that put an end to the development of airship construction. In 1936, the Zeppelin LZ-129 Hindenburg was built. It had 245 meters in length, 41 meters in diameter and 200,000 cubic meters of gas in cylinders, 4 diesel engines with a power of 1,200 horsepower each, capable of lifting air up to 100 tons of payload. The airship in calm weather reached speeds of up to 135 kilometers per hour. And then one day, according to the official version, in Germany they could not find helium to fill the cylinders, and as a result the airship was filled with explosive hydrogen. On May 6, 1937, the airship arrived from Germany to the United States after a transatlantic flight. Note that a transatlantic flight for such an airship is an ordinary task. Imagine medieval sailors if they knew about such a simple way to cross the Atlantic Ocean. Columbus, as we all believe, even in his most fantastic dream could not have imagined such a type of transport. Or is history not telling us something? Or maybe he knew. So, the Zeppelin came in for landing and suddenly exploded and crashed down 30 seconds later. And even in this situation, only 35 people out of 97 passengers and crew members died. And after this there was an advertising campaign about the dangers of airships. As a result they were banned, and airplanes took this place. competitors were destroyed. Now let's just use common sense. For example, imagine that in an era when trains, cars, airplanes have become part of everyday life and are part of the economy of civilization, they put explosives in a train and blow it up, and then ban this type of transport. They melted down the rails and stopped the development of railway transport. Or they blow up a car's gas tank, show the whole world how dangerous this type of transport is, and ban it. They create a plane crash, show the whole world that this is a very dangerous form of transport, and ban aircraft construction. And this is exactly what the Hindenburg incident achieved. By the way, in the same way, at the beginning of the 20th century, the electric vehicle industry was considered ineffective. In the 90s, they conducted an experiment, produced several thousand electric vehicles in the USA, and when people were completely accustomed to this new forgotten type of transport, they removed it from circulation again. Thousands of activists were against the destruction of such an excellent and inexpensive environmental form of transport, but this had no effect. They were all forcibly disposed of. And now again, the electric vehicle industry was revived after 2005, but only when they figured out how to compare the costs of its operation with other types of transport. That is, electric cars have become expensive, the batteries quickly fail, and all the savings are eaten up. As we see, the global management itself decides which types of transport will develop and which will not. Well, it is clear that no one will even be able to build an airship privately for the simple reason that all the patents have been bought out, and no one will be given flight corridors. However, although this is not advertised, airships are still built, but in highly specialized areas, for example, to lift a satellite into the stratosphere, for meteorological or even advertising purposes. Let us consider the aircraft of the uncertain Middle Ages. According to the official history, it can be assumed that these are the creative fantasies of a 20th century man who anticipated the era of aeronautics. However, the more we look at these aircraft, it will seem to us that someone once built all of this or restored various types of models from memory. Here we see that the balloon is used for military purposes. We see the exhaust here. The balloon has a large rudder, which means it is designed for some kind of directed movement. The balloon is laid up. Arch is an element of ancient architecture. When did this happen in the Middle Ages? The use of balloons for military purposes. Landing in water. The balloon maneuvers calmly among the mountains. What's interesting is that it seems like this is a railroad and he's evacuating some kind of carriage. With the increased use of balloons, the likelihood of any accidents increases. The balloon lifts such a small house with an upper deck. Shown here are quite large flying platforms on which an entire town is built. This can be called balloons of only this shape and some kind of propulsion structures. A balloon could even be built in this way, if it has a sufficiently large lifting force. The design of a flying car can be attributed to fantasy or evidence that such devices were produced in the Middle Ages. This is probably a steam engine. These are the vertical thrust blades. These guides are horizontal. The flying car takes off from the tower with a bounce. This design can operate on anti-gravity. Most likely, anti-gravitator balls are located here. They are indicated in different sources in the form of balls like these. The glow is apparently a side effect. Here's a simple design. A boat and an anti-gravity device, and a sail as a motor. Nowadays flying wing is also used. Why couldn't it have been used at that time? Controlled parachute. The type of parachute is an anti-gravity device, and then some kind of propulsion force, and do whatever you want. Even if you attach them to a person S-belt, the required number of these balls will cause the person to soar into the sky. Another thing is that he has no means to directed movement. Prepared nacelle, engine with thrust and rudder. The airship balloon is hung here, and off we go. Here is an analog of the flying machines of ancient Japan. Steam anti-gravity balls can be flapped with wings, or moved by something else. All these are various types of balloons, transforming into various forms of airships with an unknown type of thrust and without smoke. With rare exceptions, it is clear that this was done individually. Each one used their own personal engineering approach and design, and had the apparatus in their own household. More serious models were produced industrially, intended for cargo or people, and look more impressive. Obviously, rulers with large resources decorated balloons and airships with rich paintings. Japanese animation director Hayao Miyazaki in his works The Flying Castle of Laputa, Spirited Away, Howl's Moving Castle and others recreate the antediluvian era of Ainu cults, which is now passed off as Japanese. We see there the type of statehood of the Russian Empire, Vedic culture, techno-magical technologies, megaliths side by side with the ancient one. It's like a Japanese boat on balls. Antigrav freezes, but cannot move the object. Therefore, it needs to be pushed with a sail, propeller, or wings, and for domestic use this can even be done manually. The result is something like a bicycle. This technology could scale to any size. It is likely that the energy for anti-gravity was drawn from the environment, and in these drawings we can see all these techniques for using combined technologies. So why was it decided to shut down this technology? The simplest answer: people privately owning such means of transportation would then have the opportunity to be independent from centralized control, tied to one place, taxed on income, and imposed the framework into which people are driven today. Now we have a well-managed herd that needs shearing, free labor, plus a lot of utility, and, if necessary, taken to scheduled slaughter. Moreover, in order to move long distances, simple shunting engines are sufficient for airships. Even before the 19th century, it was known that the atmosphere consists of all kinds of air currents, divided into layers and moving in different directions. There are layers in which the speed of airflows reaches several hundred kilometers per hour, up to 400, and which encircle the entire Earth. These air currents can be found, and we also know about the existence of atmospheric rivers, which are no less full-flowing, like all above-ground and underground rivers. For example, the reason for flooding in Sochi, Tuapse, and other Black Sea cities is very simple. Atmospheric rivers, for some reason, change their directions, and when they crash into a mountain, it all flows down. This information is not advertised, no one covers it, and therefore these phenomena do not seem to exist. This is how freedom of information works today, available to anyone who wants to know. The beauty of such management is that there are few people who want to know, and they cannot change anything, even if they talk about it publicly, since most are already tired of useless information that does not affect their lives in any way. And, by the way, modern rockets cannot simply cross these high-speed flows, so they are launched at points where these flows do not exist, or they begin to maneuver along these flows, which is very problematic with this design and type of thrust. And perhaps that is why witnesses see missiles at a certain altitude lying on their sides and flying somewhere into the distance. Or maybe they don't fly anywhere, they are simply drowned, dropped, and all the productions of space life in orbit are filmed on the ground. And it is not necessary to launch satellites into any orbits. It is enough to place the balloon in the desired flow, circulating in a circle across the continents, and it will move there forever, unless the balloon is lowered. But solving such a problem is a matter of technology. So, if people had the opportunity to rise to the stratosphere, they would witness numerous facts of what is so carefully hidden from the population. Firstly, all these layers are already used behind the scenes, and they do not correspond to those officially presented in science. For example, the further from the Earth, the hotter it is, not the colder. There are discharged layers, and there is a pressure that is quite normal for breathing. Perhaps even further away there is not deep cold space, but something else. We have an idea of our world order as biblical events that cannot be verified. Travelers on airships would probably discover new unknown continents that we should not know about. They would see that the distances are different, the continents are laid out differently than on the maps, and they would find other inconsistencies. And that beyond Australia and the South Pole, other lands may be opening up, and all these unknown continents are most likely inhabited by those who should not exist for us. That is, people could privately witness the fact that perhaps space is not the same, and the Earth is not at all the same. And this is evidenced by numerous antediluvian maps, which were massively republished in Latin since the 18th century. Not everything could be translated consistently, which is why there are so many different inconsistencies in the modern world order, and all this explains why there was such a need to destroy this incredible branch of aeronautics, promising for civilization.